welcome back to the show. I'm here with Rakshith Naresh. I hope I'm saying your name right there. I had to practice it several times. And he is the excellent. He's the senior product manager for ColdFusion at Adobe, and he's the guy who decides the future direction of ColdFusion there. And in today's episode, we're going to be looking at the ColdFusion 2018 roadmap that they are working on and will be released in a few weeks' time on the Adobe site. So we're going to start off by looking at how ColdFusion has changed in the last few versions and what particular features they're focusing on for ColdFusion 2018 that's going to release next year. And also, we're going to look at how they decide what features to add and the long-term commitment of Adobe to ColdFusion. And if I can squeeze Rakshith's arm behind his back, we'll find out how the ColdFusion sales are going. So welcome, Rakshith.
Thanks a lot, Michael. It's great chatting with you on this podcast.
So how has ColdFusion changed over the last few versions? I think you have a slide you want to share with us that shows some detail on that.
Absolutely. So in fact, we've had a transformation over the last few releases. The overall goal for us, Michael, has been to make sure that ColdFusion is the most stable and productive backend out there for any kind of business logic that it can host to serve across a host of client-side technologies. So that's the strong vision that we've had, and we've executed towards that vision over the last few releases. So not just the next version coming up, but we've done interesting work associated with that over the last few releases. So I'll just like to show you a slide deck that talks about, that just pictorially represents what I tell you about. Let me just go ahead and share the screen here. Can you see my screen now?
Yep, can see it now. It's showing the transition from ColdFusion 10 through 11 and ColdFusion 2016 coming into 2018. And I'm just narrating a bit for the people who are listening on audio and may not be able to see the slide. So,
absolutely, great. So what you see on the left-hand side, Michael, are those various axes that we work on. So the number one expectation that our customers have from ColdFusion is to be a really high-performing and a scalable platform, because they host a critical business logic on the platform itself, on their web application platform. So the basic expectation that our customers have is to have a really high-performing and a scalable platform. So we need to live up to that and beat the expectations every single release. The second one is around security. As you possibly know, that there are only more and more vulnerabilities being discovered every single day. So obviously our customers want to have a really secure platform on which they can run the business on. So that's the security. Security continues to be the second need. The third one is productivity. As most of us know, ColdFusion is the most productive platform out there for web application development. So our customers or developers have this expectation that they want this productivity features associated with the product, with every version of the product. And the last one is being future ready. So for instance, when they build, or when our customers or developers are invested in a particular technology, they want to make sure that the applications that they build are ready not just for today, but for the future as well. So we actually work on these axes to transform the product from one version to another. So just to give you a sense, starting off with ColdFusion 10, which was released in 2012, we started working on the product sometime in the year 2010. So towards a high-performing and a scalable platform, the opportunities that we had back then was around HTML5. And back in those days, REST-based web services were getting quite popular, mostly because of mobility. So what we did was we used this opportunity of HTML5. So Adobe was kind of not focusing very heavily on Flash, and HTML5 was picking up. At the same time, REST-based services were getting really popular to host web services more than SOAP. So what we did was we came up with a suite of features that actually enable our customers to use this opportunity and build something really interesting. So that was ColdFusion 10 through the transition from JRUN to Tomcat. We also made the platform secure by default. So we've improved the security access quite a bit over the last few releases. On the productivity side of things, we came up with the built-in REST-based services. So with just a few lines of code, our developers can expose their existing business logic as REST-based services. And for being future ready, we came up with the HTML5 support with a built-in WebSocket support as well as HTML5 chatting. So that was ColdFusion 10. Now, the next opportunity that we focused on, remember that our vision was to ensure that we become the most scalable and productive platform. So towards that vision, we focused on multiple opportunities, starting out with HTML5 and REST. Then in ColdFusion 11, it was all about mobility. So can we let our developers build interesting mobile application development, build, test, debug mobile applications using mobility as a space? So, and that was ColdFusion 11, where we focused on creating a high-performing PDF engine to improve the performance. We introduced security-related features to enhance the security of the product, various PDF improvements, and finally, the mobile application development platform itself. So that was ColdFusion 11. And ColdFusion 2016 was the next version of transformation, where we focused on API management. So now that we had HTML5 and REST services along with mobility coming in, we realized that our customers would want to expose API through the API management platform. So we came up with a built-in API management platform and transformed ColdFusion itself to have an API management platform itself in ColdFusion 2016. Now, the next opportunity that we have in front of us is microservices. So what we are seeing increasingly is that once you have APIs, our customers would want to have those APIs exposed as microservices that can scale independently. So that's the next opportunity that we are looking at for ColdFusion 2018 or Ether coming up in the next version. So if you look at all the opportunities, all of them actually are related. You have REST, you have kind of converging, all of these converge to make sure that ColdFusion is the best platform out there for hosting business logic across any kind of client, be it a mobile client or be it a web-based applications. ColdFusion, the vision continues to be to make ColdFusion the best platform out there for any kind of consumption from a client side. So that's the vision. And this is how we have transformed the product over the last few releases as well, with the most recent one being the API management platform, which is really interesting because we are getting a lot of traction for this API management platform that we introduced in ColdFusion 2016. Just to give you some sense of the data, 71% of our customers already build REST-based services. So for them to expose those services using an API management platform makes all the more sense, and we are getting a lot of traction specifically around the API management platform, and I'm quite excited about the directions that we have, and even the future directions will be focused quite a bit on the API management platform itself. So basically, this is how we have transformed the product over the last few releases.
So the API management is for your own APIs that you create, is that right?
The APIs are the customer APIs. Let me just, now that we're on this topic, let me just show you. I'll just stop the sharing here. Since you're on the API management topic, I would just like to quickly show you what is it and what are we trying to do with the API management platform. Let me just go back and share my screen, because this one slide will give you a really good understanding of what we're trying to do with the API management platform. Go ahead and share this, share the screen. So can you see my screen now?
It's loading up. There it is. Yep.
Okay, so when I say APIs, these are customer APIs, not ColdFusion exposing APIs. These are APIs that are exposed by ColdFusion developers to their end customers. So that's the API referring to REST-based or SOAP-based services. Now, I just want to quickly highlight what we're doing with the API management platform. So these are typically the steps that need to be followed by our customers to take an API or build an API and take it from concept to a production stage. So step number one is where our customers define a set of business objectives. Why do you even need to have an API? Who is the target audience? All that happens in step number one. Step number two is where our developers design the API. Do I use SOAP-based web service or a REST-based web service? All that decision happens in step number two. Step number three is where you actually code the API. You can choose CFML, or you can use .NET, PHP, any backend technology to code an API. So the coding happens in step number 3. It doesn't end at just coding an API. There are a lot more steps that are needed to actually take an API to production. So those are the additional steps that I have on the slide deck. Step number 4 is where developers need to secure the API. For instance, what about access control? You don't want anybody to start accessing your API. You need strict access control mechanisms in place. So that is step number 4. You also need to protect the APIs against various API-based vulnerabilities. All that happens in step number 4. Step number 5 is where our developers need to manage the various versions of the API, perhaps also have an SLA or a service level agreement using which they can expose the API to their customers. For instance, their platinum customers get to access APIs in an unlimited fashion. Gold customers get to access only 60 times per minute. All that SLAs, definition of SLAs happens in step number 5. Step number 6 is a really important step. Step number 6 is where developers who are trying to consume the API try to engage with the company or the customer who's trying to expose API through a developer portal. They try to understand the documentation associated with the API, even try out the API without having to write a single line of code. All that happens in step number 6. Step number 7 is a really important step again, which is measuring the impact. For instance, how do our ColdFusion developers even figure out if their API strategy is really working out well? For that, they need detailed analytics to figure out who's consuming the API, what has been the average data in, data out to these APIs. So these are the various steps that are needed to take an API from concept to production. What was happening with ColdFusion 11 or versions before ColdFusion 11 was that ColdFusion was just focused on step number 3, which is coding the API. Now, with the new API management platform, the API management platform takes care of steps 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Access control is baked in. Threat protection for APIs is baked in. We have a management platform for the APIs where developers can manage multiple versions of the API, also manage the lifecycle of the API. There is a built-in developer portal using which you can expose your APIs and let developers read documentation associated with the APIs. And there's also a built-in analytics capability for the API using which they can figure out which APIs are doing well, what's the average data in, and also get detailed insights about the usage of the API. Now, all this is happening with the API management platform. So our developers don't have to worry about any of these steps other than step number 3 where they code the API, and the rest of the steps are taken care completely by ColdFusion's API management platform. And this is something transformational. ColdFusion was never able to do anything like this in the past. And since there's so much of relevance to ColdFusion audience here, this is the reason why we are seeing a lot of traction for the new API management platform that we introduced in ColdFusion 2016.
That's great. So previously, developers would have to do all the other steps manually, or they may not even do them right because they weren't sure what to do there.
Exactly. You got it right. Absolutely. That's correct.
Well, that's great. So you mentioned there's several other new things coming in ColdFusion 2018. I think you've got a containerized platform. Is that going to be with Docker or some other container or?
Yes, so that is more short term actually. Our developers don't have to wait for ColdFusion 2018, which will be released next year. So sometime this year, we will have official Docker images available for as a Docker image so that they can directly start using and create a container out of the official Docker image. So that's happening in the next few months. We are also looking at Red Hat's OpenShift platform as well. So we're already there on AWS Marketplace. We are also looking at Red Hat's OpenShift and OpenShift container platform as well, wherein which our developers can leverage the platform to take true advantage of a containerized platform. So that's the more short-term plan that will happen sometime this year. Perhaps even before ColdFusion Summit, we will have that going.
Great. Well, we'll talk more about ColdFusion Summit later in the episode. But I'm excited about the containerization because I know some folks have already been doing that other ways. So having the official images from Adobe will be great.
Great.
And then I noticed also you've got asynchronous programming listed as one of the productivity improvements in ColdFusion 2018. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So one of the primary focus areas for the next version is on performance, Michael. So what we're doing is we are improving the performance of the runtime itself. So ColdFusion 2018 will be the most high-performing runtime that you can expect. Basically, it will be the high-performing platform with all the runtime improvements in place. We're also looking at support for a distributed cache as well, using which all the caching can actually be distributed and offloaded onto a different server in itself, and all the nodes of the ColdFusion cluster talk to this distributed cache to fetch information in and out of the cache. So that is one other enhancement that we're doing to support a distributed cache. The nice thing about the distributed cache feature set is that you can also plug in your own distributed cache engine as well. So using which we are planning to support a few set of distributed cache offerings, but if somebody wants to plug in their own offering, they can easily do that with just a few lines of CFML code. So that's on the performance side of things. What we also realized is the tools that are needed. It's not just the runtime improvements that our customers are looking for. Even the tools associated with performance improvements is something that we are really actively looking forward to. So we are planning to come up with a performance management suite, which is a set of tools using which you'll be able to figure out potential bottlenecks in your application. For instance, if there is any issue between your web server and the ColdFusion application server through the connector configuration. So there will be an auto-connected tuner that will ensure that there is optimal connection between the web server and application server. Now, if there are any kind of issues within the server itself, we will have a revamped monitoring solution as a part of the performance management suite, which will figure out if there are any kind of issues in the JVM. Is database the bottleneck? There will be a built-in monitoring solution available. And that is level number 2. We are also looking at a code profiler. What if there are issues within the application itself? What if there are specific lines of code which is actually causing the bottleneck for performance? So we are planning to come up with a built-in code profiler as well. So a multiple tools will actually form this performance management suite, and that is an exciting area that we are focusing on for the next version of the product on the performance side of things.
Wow. So that will help us have faster apps, have servers that start faster, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. That's the intent. The reason, Michael, so I just want to touch upon the reason why we are focusing so much on performance. What we realized was based on the one-on-one conversations that we have had with customers and also various roadshows that we've been having over the last couple of years, I realized that based on the conversations that 71% of our customers have goals associated with improving the performance of their applications. They want to improve the end user response time, make sure that the service is available perhaps at 4 nines, like 99.99% of the time. They want the ColdFusion service to be available to ensure that they can do business. So these are some of the KPIs or goals that our customers are striving towards. Be it the IT manager, be it the web architect in the team, be it the ColdFusion developer, all of them are working towards this goal of improving the performance and scalability of the platform. Now, we were just focused on runtime performance improvements in the previous version. With this version, with the tool set, we will give our customers the power to extract a lot more out of their existing investments in ColdFusion to make sure that it's an extremely high-performing platform. So that's the whole idea. That's the reason why we are invested so much on the performance side of things for the next version of the product.
Well, I think that's exciting to a lot of people listening. You mentioned security has been a focus for Adobe on ColdFusion for more than 5 years now, from version 10 through 2016 and now 2018. What new security things can we look forward to?
Great, I can talk about that. Now, when you compare ColdFusion with any other competing technology out there, the data, the external data to show that ColdFusion is the most secure platform out there. If you look at the website cvedetails.com that talks about the various vulnerabilities associated with backend technology, if you look at the number of issues that have been reported from 2011 to 2016, ColdFusion has the least number of vulnerabilities compared to any other backend technology, be it a .NET or PHP, or be it even the Ruby on Rails or the Javas of the world. ColdFusion has the least number of vulnerabilities reported. And not just that, there is something known as a zero-day vulnerability as well, which is a critical vulnerability in a backend technology or any other product for that matter. ColdFusion hasn't had a zero-day vulnerability from 2013. 2013 was the last year where we had a zero-day vulnerability. We have never had a zero-day vulnerability over the last 4 years or so. And we are the only backend technology to have not had any kind of zero-day vulnerability. So if you take .NET, if you take PHP or any other technology, you will see that they have such zero-day vulnerability.
That's impressive. So congratulations on that. That shows that all the hard work you've been doing on security and has paid off.
Great, thank you. Thanks a lot for that.
And then you mentioned you're doing some language improvements as well. Can you tell us any of the language things that you're doing?
So language is one area that we're always excited about because developers love anything to do with the language improvements. So we are looking at various aspects to improve the language for the next version of the product. We are introducing new object-oriented features for CFCs. For instance, you can do inheritance and we'll introduce the concept of an abstract component. Inheritance or implementing an interface will be so much more neater. So that's on the object-oriented side of things. So we're doing a significant amount of enhancements on that. We will soon have a pre-release as well. I want to mention that as well. So we will soon go with a really early pre-release of ColdFusion 2018 with all the language enhancements that I'll be talking about now. So that will be something interesting for our developers to just jump on the pre-release and try out the language features and give us good amount of feedback. So I'm really looking forward to that. So that's just the one object-oriented.
How would people sign up for that? Is there a beta program or is open beta?
It's an alpha program, actually, early alpha. We're not even in an alpha stage right now. It will be a pre-alpha kind of a scenario. So just the developers need to keep an eye on blogs.coldfusion.com at the ColdFusion blogs URL. So I'll be making a post very soon, opening up a survey where developers can actually fill up the survey and let us know that they are interested to participate in a pre-release program for ColdFusion 2018. So that's the way to get in.
Great. Well, we'll look forward to that coming out, and I'll include the link for that on the show notes. And then I think you mentioned BDF was part of this release. Right. Can you tell us what that is and why it's important?
Sure. So BDF has always been a really important feature set or differentiator for ColdFusion when compared to competition. Since the technology coming in from Adobe, our developers and customers and developers expect us to do really well in terms of PDF. So we are revamping the underlying engine itself for HTML to PDF conversion and HTML to PDF transformation as a part of the next version. And we will be using the latest Adobe technology to make this happen. So all the HTML to PDF conversion will happen by making sure that the latest HTML5 or CSS is being factored in for the conversion itself. So you can expect us to deliver a really high performing engine and also something that can do an exact pixel perfect HTML to PDF conversion using the latest technology from Adobe. So PDF, not every customers use PDF, but the ones who use PDF, it matters a lot for them. So that's the reason we are focused on PDF as well. Not significantly as important as performance or security, but PDF and language continue to drive our developers who love the feature set associated.
Great. Well, I know some folks will be excited about that. I noticed asynchronous programming was mentioned on your slide. Is that a new feature?
Yes, I missed talking about that. Sorry. So yes, so this is again related to performance. So there will, as I said, performance is a significant focus area for the next version. So async programming is a new set of constructs that we will be introducing as a part of ColdFusion 2018. It's so much more beyond CF thread. CF thread just gives you the ability to create a thread, and that's about it. But now with async programming, we are planning to introduce the concept of futures and promises and provide a framework around it using which our developers can actually run a task asynchronously. So let's say if some task is IO intensive and it doesn't have to occupy the main thread of the web application, our developers can easily offload that onto an asynchronous program, and so that the computation happens on a different thread altogether. And once the result is available, the main thread can just pick it up from this asynchronous thread to make your web application so much more faster. So that is a really interesting area for us. And I would love to hear developers' feedback when they get on the pre-release for the next version of the product.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. So I've got an overall question here for you, which is, how do you decide what features you are going to add into ColdFusion 2018 or any future version?
Great. I think that's a great question. So over the multiple discussions that I've had with our customers, small and large, what I always tend to hear is performance, security, language, and PDF matters the most in that particular order. So what I did was the ideas that we have, I presented that to our large customers and even some of our medium-sized customers, and also at the roadshows. We have a series of roadshows that the ColdFusion marketing team runs every year. So even this year we had various roadshows across the United States. So I presented the ideas on performance. So the ones that I told you about, the performance management suite, on the security side of things, how we are planning to come up with an automation for lockdown guide, the language feature set, the asynchronous programming that I spoke to you about, the improved object-oriented support, the improved PDF support. What I then did was I gave the audience a $100 test. So now that you have all these focus areas in performance, security, language, and PDF, so let's say you had $100 to invest on a particular feature or a set of features. So our customers or developers get to split that $100 across the various features that I present them in the roadshow. So for instance, if somebody feels that performance management suite is the most important feature for them, they go ahead and allocate $100 entirely on the performance side of things and zero for the rest. Or if somebody cares more about language, they would potentially bet $70 on the language, and let's say $30 on PDF. Now, based on all this actually gives me a great way to figure out what really matters and what bubbles up to the top. So based on all these conversations, the number one thing that came up in this $100 test was the performance management suite itself and the performance improvements that we're doing. So clearly, the next version of the product will be a performance-centric version, followed by security, followed by language, and then followed by PDF. And all this is through detailed validation that I do with our customers and developers. And I'm sure many in the audience itself who would hear this podcast would have actually participated in this $100 test itself.
Mm. So you spend a lot of your time talking with ColdFusion users around the world.
Absolutely, that's correct. So be it in conferences, be it in user groups, I love talking to ColdFusion developers and understand how they're solving the problems that they have with ColdFusion as a platform.
That's great that you're listening to, the real world problems that people have. And then do you have, I know you have like an open bug list that shows outstanding bugs. Do you analyze that for which ones are most important to fix first, or?
Yes, so I don't necessarily look at the bugs, but we do have an engineering team who focus on the bug fixing itself. So we do have a quality engineering team who look at all the bugs that have been logged and make sure that we fix those bugs with a specific version of the product. Let me just quickly
Great.
grab Michael. Just give me a minute, Michael.
All right, so glad you're back. So one thing that I know people often ask me is how long will Adobe, have a commitment to ColdFusion? Can you speak to that?
Okay, so I want to touch upon how well ColdFusion is doing for Adobe. Over the last few years, ColdFusion has been generating significant revenue for Adobe, and it's on a growth path as well. It's only a myth that people assume that it's no longer growing, it's actually on its decline. Our numbers clearly do not indicate that. We are actually growing. In fact, we are growing at 12% year over year, which is a great number for any product at Adobe's level. So Adobe is fully committed to the platform, obviously, because the business is doing well. So Adobe will continue to invest in the product as well. And also, just to let you know about our support commitments, with every version of the product, we have 5 years of core support and 2 years of extended support. So what I mean by that is, let's take the example of ColdFusion 2016. So ColdFusion 2016 was released last year in the year 2016. So ColdFusion 2016 will have core support till 2021 and extended support till 2023. And we're already working on ColdFusion Ether, which will be released in 2018, which will have extended support till 2025. So just the existing support commitments that we have for the product last till like 2025. So that just goes on to show the long-term commitment that Adobe has based on our existing support commitments itself, and coupled with the business doing well, we are really excited about where we are with ColdFusion and also about the future directions that we are planning to take with the product.
That sounds like a great commitment you've made there. And just for folks who aren't clear, extended support means you keep on issuing hot fixes for security issues through that date.
Yes, the core support is more on the proactive security fixes. So let me just clarify that. So during the core support, which is 5 years from the date of the release, so we keep providing proactive security fixes and hot fixes. So that's during the first 5 years. Now, the next 2 years, we provide additional support to make sure that our customers migrate to a more recent version. So that is what the extended support is for. So the more proactive security fixes and hot fixes will happen in the first 5 years, and plus 2 additional years to make sure that we help our customers in case if somebody is still stuck with an older version of the product, we provide them full support to ensure that we provide them the necessary workarounds, necessary migration paths to move them on to the latest version. So that's the 7-year support that I was referring to.
Great. Well, excited about that. So let's just switch to a related topic, which is why you're proud to be involved with ColdFusion.
Absolutely. So I can talk about that. So I have been associated with the product for like 11 years now. So I joined the team as an engineer trying to build various features in ColdFusion 8. That was the release that was going on back then. So I didn't have any idea about ColdFusion as a platform when I joined the team. I was basically from a Java background. Now, the first day when I joined Adobe, I was asked to build a web application using ColdFusion. So I didn't know anything about ColdFusion other than Java. I only knew Java. Now, that was the first time I started using ColdFusion to build a sample application. I was given 5 days to build a web application, a sample web application. What happened was I started building it in the morning, and by evening, I was able to wrap up the web application itself. I was able to build a full-fledged web application It was a simple application, of course, not a complex application, but I was able to, though I had 5 days allocated to that, I was able to build it in less than a day. And that's when I fell in love with the technology, the productivity associated with the platform itself. So I fell in love with the technology right from day one. And after that, I've been building various features, and ColdFusion has been great for me because I've been able to transform from a role of an engineer into a product management role, which is all about the business side of things. So personally, ColdFusion has been a growth story for me, from where I was in my career 10 years ago to where I've been, where the entire journey and where I am right now. And also, one of the things that really excites me is the contribution that we make to our customers. ColdFusion plays a critical role in our customer base. So in a recent survey that we did, we realized that 76% of our customers could give ColdFusion a criticality rating of 5 on 5. So I asked them a question like, how important do you rate ColdFusion to be in your technology stack? 1 being least important and 5 being most important. 76% gave a 5 on 5, which means that we are a part of a critical technology stack, helping our customers build critical web applications using the platform, using such a productive platform with such a small team. 70% of Fortune 100 companies use ColdFusion. 50% of Fortune 500 use ColdFusion. And that itself makes me so proud that the technology is being adopted and used so very well across a wide customer base. So this really makes me feel proud being associated with such an interesting platform for over 11 years now.
That's great. So sometimes I've seen blog posts out there saying ColdFusion is dying, which seems pretty ridiculous because they've been saying that for more than 10 years and it seems to be getting better and better every year. But my question for you is, what would it take to make ColdFusion even more alive this year?
Okay, so we've been, so within Adobe, we've been trying to make sure that, ColdFusion gets a lot more focus and we devote a lot more time to make ColdFusion even better. One is the transformation from the product itself that we did over the last few years that I spoke about. That is one thing that Adobe has done. We also came up with, we also have the largest ColdFusion conference, largest developer conference that Adobe has, which is CF Summit, which will happen sometime later this year. So these are some of the things that Adobe has done. Now, one of the things that we definitely need to do, both from within Adobe as well as the ColdFusion developers, is that that perception out there. It's only a negative perception that is out there, that is flying around saying that ColdFusion does not do as well, does not perform as well. It's a dying technology. So we within Adobe try to kill that perception by having these customer conversations with our large customers, even with industry analysts such as Gartner and Forrester. In fact, I recently had a conversation with Gartner and Forrester, telling them about how we have transformed the product over the last few years. And they were really excited to know that there's so much happening on the ColdFusion side of things. And it's only a myth that ColdFusion is a dying technology. I think we, as Adobe and as the developer community, we need to make sure that we spread out the message that it is only a perception that ColdFusion is a dying technology. It is actually alive and growing, and the product itself has an exciting roadmap. I think we as a community need to really, in a strong way, communicate that message to all the stakeholders associated. Even if there's a new CIO who's joining a new company, we should be able to tell them that ColdFusion is the best technology out there for building a web application. I think that's the opportunity that we have lying in front of us.
That is great. And, I've had a lot of conversations on the podcast about this, and there's so many cool things people are doing with ColdFusion, from, microservices to command line interfaces people are using with it. It's amazing what people have created using ColdFusion. So I think getting the word out on the cool new apps that listeners are creating would be a good thing. And if anyone has a cool thing they're doing with ColdFusion, please reach out to me and I'll be happy to feature it on the show. So great. So I know you're going to CF Summit in November in Las Vegas. What are you looking forward to at that conference?
ColdFusion Summit is really a great place for me to interact with a whole range of developers. It's the largest developer conference that Adobe runs. Last year we had more than 500 plus attendees. In fact, we always sell out the conference. So we just plan for a limited set of number, and somehow always it runs up to the full capacity, close out the tickets. So I'm sure that's going to happen this year as well, and the numbers are growing every year. For me, the summit is all about one other platform where we showcase to our developers and various stakeholders. What excites me about ColdFusion Summit is it's not just the ColdFusion developers out there. The decision makers also attend ColdFusion Summit. So it's mostly the developers know the power of the platform. The decision makers, the new decision makers, they are the ones who are kind of apprehensive about what ColdFusion is capable of. So ColdFusion Summit provides this great platform, not just for developers to exchange interesting ideas and get to know about what's happening, but also influence their decision makers to let them know that ColdFusion is a really great technology and there are a lot of interesting things happening around the platform itself. And also the lineup of the sessions that we have. So we have 40 sessions happening this year on various tracks over the 2-day conference. We also have workshops happening on the pre-conference. So a lot of interesting stuff. And just the fact that I get to interact with so many new faces. So if you come to Summit this year, you will see so many new faces that you've never met in any of the other conferences. You will see young developers, some of the new developers, and it'll be great to have a conversation with them to understand how they've been using ColdFusion and how are they learning the platform and how they like the platform. All these customer conversations, ColdFusion Summit just provides me an opportunity to understand a lot more about the usage of ColdFusion.
Well, that sounds really exciting. And I had a conversation with Alicia from Adobe all about ColdFusion Summit. So I'll link that episode into the show notes for people who want to hear all the exciting details on the event. So I really appreciate you joining us today. I know it's kind of late in the day for you there in India. And I hope we get a chance to talk with you again on the podcast in the future.
Absolutely. I would love to jump on another podcast and to talk to you more about ColdFusion.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Rakshith.
And thanks a lot for all the work that you're doing with the podcast. You're doing a great job.